Imagine a simple day like sitting down to a meal, something most people do without a second thought. But for those living with Parkinson's, even this everyday moment can become a veritable minefield of complicated decisions. Have you ever felt that hesitation as you look at your plate, unsure whether what you're about to eat will help or worsen your tremors in the coming hours? Perhaps you've noticed how certain foods seem to intensify stiffness or lessen the effect of medication, while others seem to provide temporary relief from symptoms. Or perhaps you've received well-intentioned but confusing advice from friends and family about what you should and shouldn't eat, leaving you even more confused about what really makes a difference. You're not alone on this journey of uncertainty. Thousands of people with Parkinson's and their caregivers face this dietary dilemma every day, unable to find clear, evidence-based answers. The connection between diet and Parkinson's goes far beyond what most doctors have time to explain during a quick consultation. As a nutritionist specializing in neurodegenerative diseases, I've seen hundreds of patients who have significantly improved their quality of life simply by strategically reorganizing their diet. After many years of studying the latest research and observing patterns in my own patients, I can confidently say that there are foods that may be sabotaging your treatment and accelerating disease progression, and others that can be true allies in managing symptoms. Today I'll share with you the 5 worst foods that may be worsening your Parkinson's symptoms or accelerating disease progression, as well as 5 scientifically proven foods that can help curb symptoms and possibly even slow the progression of the condition. We're not talking about miracles, but rather small daily changes that can make a big difference in your mobility, energy, and getting the most out of your medication. Before we begin, I'd like to know where you're watching from today. Leave a comment below and feel free to ask any questions you have about diet and Parkinson's. Before we dive into this crucial topic that can transform your quality of life, I want to extend a special invitation. If you or someone you love is facing the daily challenges of Parkinson's and is looking for reliable science-based information explained in a simple way, the Beyond Parkinson's channel was created especially for you. Here, we regularly share practical strategies, exercises, and tips that have helped hundreds of people regain small and large amounts of independence in their daily lives. Click the subscribe button now. It's completely free, so you won't miss any techniques that can make a difference in your quality of life or that of your loved one. Now let's begin our journey through the foods that may be sabotaging your Parkinson's management efforts. First, let's talk about the villains, foods that scientific research and clinical experience indicate can potentially worsen symptoms or the progression of Parkinson's disease. The first and perhaps most surprising on our list is dairy, especially whole milk and its derivatives. Among the many foods we consume daily, dairy stands out as particularly problematic for people with Parkinson's. But how exactly does dairy affect people with Parkinson's? Let's explore together. The main problem is related to the interaction of dairy products with the most common medication used to treat the disease, levodopa. Studies published in the Journal of Neurology have shown that proteins found in milk and dairy products can compete with levodopa for absorption in the intestine, significantly reducing its effectiveness. This means that if you take your medication with a glass of milk, cheese, or yogurt, you may only be getting a fraction of the benefit you should. Patients often report what we call the on-off phenomenon, where medication seems to work well at some times and fails completely at others. This erratic pattern is often directly related to dairy consumption close to medication doses. Furthermore, research conducted by Harvard Medical School followed more than 120,000 people for 25 years and found a significant correlation between regular consumption of full-fat dairy products and an increased risk of developing Parkinson's, especially in men. This suggests that dairy may not only worsen symptoms, but potentially contribute to the progression of the disease. Importantly, this correlation was primarily observed with high-fat, full-fat dairy products, not necessarily with skim versions. How does dairy affect neuroinflammation in Parkinson's? Recent neuroimaging studies show that regular consumption of full-fat dairy products can increase inflammatory processes in the nervous system, and we know that chronic inflammation is one of the main factors that accelerate neuronal degeneration in Parkinson's. But does this mean you need to completely eliminate dairy from your diet? Not necessarily. The most practical recommendation is to maintain a gap of at least 1 hour between consuming dairy and taking your medication, ideally taking levodopa on an empty stomach with water. For those who still want to consume dairy, opting for skim versions may be a less problematic alternative. And remember, calcium, important for bone health, can be obtained from other sources such as green leafy vegetables, chia seeds, and sardines. Before we move on to the next problem food, I want to pause to ask you something important. What time of day do Parkinson's symptoms most affect you or your loved one's life? Is it upon waking, when stiffness seems to take over? Or perhaps during meals, when tremors make every bite a challenge? Or is it at night, when sleep simply won't come? This question isn't just out of curiosity, you know? Many people with Parkinson's feel like no one truly understands the invisible challenges they face daily, and you're not alone. Share your experience in the comments. You can simply copy and complete this sentence. My biggest challenge with Parkinson's is when I try, and then your comment could be exactly the information someone else needs to read today to feel understood and less alone. Plus, your feedback helps us create content more tailored to the real challenges you face. Now, let's continue with our second strategy that can bring significant relief to many of the challenges you share. The second item on our list of problematic foods is ultra-processed foods rich in chemical additives. Among the numerous dietary villains for people with Parkinson's, ultra-processed foods loaded with preservatives, artificial colors, and flavor enhancers occupy a prominent place. Research from the University of California Neuroscience Institute has demonstrated a clear association between regular consumption of these products and increased oxidative stress in the brain. The fundamental problem is that the brains of people with Parkinson's are already under intense oxidative stress, which is one of the main mechanisms for the destruction of dopamine-producing neurons. When we add ultra-processed foods to the equation, we're essentially pouring gasoline on a fire. Of particular concern are preservatives such as sodium nitrite, found in processed meats like sausage, ham, bologna, and bacon. A study published in the European Journal of Neurology followed more than 1,000 Parkinson's patients for 5 years and found a direct correlation between frequent consumption of these foods and the rapid progression of the disease. Patients who ate processed meats 3 or more times a week experienced approximately 20% faster motor impairment than those who rarely ate them. In addition to preservatives, artificial sweeteners found in diet sodas and zero-sugar products also raise red flags. Recent research in animal models suggests that some sweeteners, such as aspartame, can potentially affect the blood-brain barrier, increasing the vulnerability of dopaminergic neurons. Although more human studies are needed, prudence recommends moderation. Another problematic component is artificial colors, especially bright ones. Preliminary research indicates that some of them can cross the blood-brain barrier and potentially contribute to inflammatory processes in the brain. How can I identify these ultra-processed foods in practice? A simple rule of thumb is to check the ingredients list. If it contains items you wouldn't recognize as food in your grandmother's kitchen or has complicated chemical names, we're probably talking about an ultra-processed food. Common examples include soft drinks, packaged snacks, cake mixes, instant soups, ready-made sauces, sandwich cookies, and most convenience foods. The good news is that there are healthier alternatives to almost all ultra-processed foods. For example, instead of hot dogs, opt for fresh proteins like chicken, fish, or tofu. Instead of soda, try water with lemon wedges or unsweetened iced tea. Instead of packaged snacks, consider nuts, dried fruit, or homemade popcorn without additives. The change doesn't have to be radical. Many patients report significant improvements by gradually reducing their consumption of these products, replacing one item at a time with more natural alternatives. Now let's move on to the third item on our list: refined sugar and simple carbohydrates. Among the many dietary factors that influence Parkinson's symptoms, refined sugar and simple carbohydrates like white flour stand out as particularly problematic. To understand why, we need to look at how these foods affect energy levels and symptom stability throughout the day. When we consume refined sugar, sweets, soft drinks, cakes, or foods made with white flour like conventional bread and pasta, our bodies quickly convert these simple carbohydrates into glucose, causing a sharp spike in blood sugar. This spike is invariably followed by a sharp drop, creating a metabolic roller coaster effect. For people with Parkinson's, this glycemic instability can dramatically amplify motor symptoms. A University of Toronto study of 200 Parkinson's patients showed that those who maintained more stable blood glucose levels throughout the day through appropriate dietary choices reported up to 40% fewer fluctuations in motor symptoms compared to those with large blood glucose swings. Furthermore, regular consumption of refined sugar is directly associated with insulin resistance, a condition in which the body's cells become less sensitive to insulin. Emerging research from the Mayo Clinic suggests a worrying link between insulin resistance and accelerated neurodegeneration in Parkinson's. Some researchers even refer to Parkinson's disease as a type of brain diabetes due to the similarities in the metabolic mechanisms involved. Another serious problem is that refined sugar and simple carbohydrates significantly increase systemic inflammation. A study published in the Journal of Neuroinflammation documented how frequent spikes in blood glucose activate inflammatory pathways that can cross the blood-brain barrier, exacerbating neuroinflammation already present in the brains of people with Parkinson's. How can this knowledge be applied to everyday life? Instead of completely eliminating carbohydrates, which would be impractical and unnecessary, the most effective strategy is to replace simple carbohydrates with complex ones. For example, swap white bread for whole grain versions like quinoa, oats, and amaranth. Replace white rice with brown rice, or with more nutritious versions like wild or black rice. Instead of conventional pasta, try alternatives made with whole grains or legumes like lentils and chickpeas. These complex carbohydrates are digested more slowly, resulting in a gradual release of glucose into the blood, which helps maintain more stable energy levels and possibly reduce the intensity of symptom fluctuations throughout the day. A 67-year-old patient who had Parkinson's for 8 years reported a remarkable transformation in his symptoms after just 3 weeks of replacing simple carbohydrates with complex ones. His off periods, where the medication seemed to wear off, became less frequent and less intense. He described the change as stepping off a roller coaster onto a bumpy road. Now let's move on to the fourth villain on our list: excess sodium and ultra-processed foods high in salt. Excessive sodium consumption poses a significant challenge for people with Parkinson's for multiple reasons. Among the various nutrients we consume daily, excess sodium stands out for its potentially negative impact on neurological function and treatment efficacy. A study conducted by the Department of Neurology at Johns Hopkins University found that Parkinson's patients who followed high-sodium diets had a higher prevalence and severity of dyskinesias, involuntary movements that often arise as a side effect of prolonged levodopa use. The physiological explanation for this correlation is that excess sodium can interfere with the delicate electrolyte balance necessary for the proper transmission of nerve signals. Furthermore, high sodium intake is a well-established factor for high blood pressure, which in turn is associated with worse progression of cognitive symptoms in Parkinson's patients. Neuroimaging studies conducted by the University of Helsinki have shown that hypertensive Parkinson's patients experience faster cognitive decline compared to normotensive patients with the same disease. Another concerning mechanism is the ability of excess sodium to increase oxidative stress and inflammation. Research published in the Journal of Neuroinflammation documented how high-salt diets activate inflammatory pathways that can exacerbate the neuroinflammation already present in Parkinson's. Fluid retention caused by excess sodium can also intensify the peripheral edema that many Parkinson's patients already experience, either as a symptom of the disease or as a side effect of medications such as dopamine agonists. But how can you identify and reduce sodium in your diet in a practical way? The main culprits for excess sodium in the modern diet are canned or instant soups, ready-made sauces, processed seasonings, packaged snacks, processed meats, frozen foods, and ready-made meals. Many patients are surprised to discover that sweet foods like cookies and breakfast cereals can also contain significant amounts of sodium. The World Health Organization recommends limiting daily sodium intake to no more than 2,000 mg, or approximately 1 teaspoon of salt per day for your entire diet, rather than simply reducing the salt you add to your meals, which only accounts for about 20% of the sodium we consume. The most effective strategy is to minimize ultra-processed foods and prepare more meals at home. To add flavor without salt, try fresh herbs like basil, oregano, thyme, and rosemary, spices like turmeric, cinnamon, cardamom, and cumin, and acidic seasonings like lemon and quality vinegars. Many patients report that after a few weeks of reducing salt, their palate readjusts, and they begin to appreciate the natural flavors of food much more. Now we come to the fifth and final problematic food: undercooked, processed red meat. Among the various dietary factors that can influence the progression of Parkinson's, frequent consumption of red meat, especially processed and undercooked meat, has generated growing concern in the scientific community. A large-scale study conducted by the Harvard School of Public Health followed more than 130,000 people for 12 years and found a significant correlation between high consumption of processed red meats, such as sausage, salami, and ham, and an increased risk of developing Parkinson's. People who consumed these meats more than 5 times a week had an approximately 44% higher risk of developing the disease compared to those who consumed them less than once a month. But why might red meat be problematic for those already with Parkinson's? Several proposed mechanisms exist. First, red meat, especially processed meats, is rich in heme iron, which in excess can accumulate in the brain. Studies published in the Journal of Neural Transmission documented how iron accumulation in the basal ganglia is associated with worsened Parkinson's progression, as excess iron can catalyze reactions that produce free radicals that damage neurons. Another concern is the heterocyclic compounds formed when meat is cooked at high temperatures, especially when grilled or fried until charred. Research from the U.S. National Cancer Institute suggests that these compounds can cross the blood-brain barrier and potentially contribute to oxidative stress and neuronal damage. Additionally, processed meats contain nitrates and nitrites, substances that in experimental studies have shown the ability to interfere with mitochondrial function, the same function already compromised in brain cells affected by Parkinson's. The saturated fat found in red meat, especially fattier cuts, is another problematic component. Studies published in the Journal of Lipid Research documented how diets high in saturated fat can increase neuroinflammation and potentially accelerate neuronal degeneration. Does this mean you need to become vegetarian or vegan? Not necessarily. While some research suggests benefits of plant-based diets for people with Parkinson's, a more balanced and sustainable approach for most people includes, first, significantly reducing your consumption of processed meats like sausage, bacon, ham, salami, and hot dogs. Second, replacing some red meat with higher quality proteins like omega-3 rich fish, skinless chicken, free-range eggs, and plant-based proteins like lentils, chickpeas, tofu, and tempeh. Third, when you do consume red meat, choose leaner, grass-fed cuts in smaller quantities. Fourth, use healthier cooking methods like steaming, stewing, and roasting at moderate temperatures, avoiding frying or grilling until charred. Before we introduce our next technique, I want to pause to celebrate something that rarely gets the attention it deserves: your small victories in your Parkinson's journey. Do you remember the last time you accomplished something that seemed impossible? Even something seemingly simple to others, like buttoning a shirt without help, walking around the block, or simply having a day with fewer tremors. These achievements need to be recognized and celebrated, as they represent your strength and persistence in the face of an immense challenge. Share your victory in the comments, no matter how small it may seem. You can copy and complete this sentence. My recent small victory was when by sharing your achievement, you not only document your own progress, but also ignite a spark of hope in someone who may be at the beginning of this journey, needing to believe that small advances are possible. Your stories form a mosaic of hope that sustains our community through difficult times. Now let's move on to our next installment, where we'll discuss foods that can be true allies in managing Parkinson's symptoms. Now that we've covered the villains, let's discuss the dietary heroes for those living with Parkinson's, the foods that scientific research and clinical experience point to as potential allies in managing symptoms and possibly slowing the progression of the disease. First on our list are red and purple berries, especially blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, and strawberries. Among the various food groups that can benefit people with Parkinson's, red and purple berries stand out as true natural pharmacies for the brain. These small fruits contain extraordinary concentrations of antioxidants, especially anthocyanins, the compounds responsible for their vibrant colors. Studies conducted by the USDA Human Nutrition Research Center on Aging have shown that the anthocyanins present in these fruits have a unique ability to cross the blood-brain barrier and exert neuroprotective effects directly on the brain. A study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry showed that rats treated with blueberry extract exhibited significantly less neuronal damage when exposed to toxins that commonly cause Parkinson's-like symptoms. In terms of specific benefits for those already living with the disease, research from Tufts University suggests that regular consumption of these fruits can help reduce oxidative stress and neuroinflammation, two key processes in the progression of Parkinson's. Furthermore, these fruits are rich in soluble fiber, which helps stabilize blood sugar levels, contributing to greater symptom stability throughout the day. Blueberries in particular deserve special mention. A large observational study conducted by the Harvard School of Public Health followed more than 130,000 health professionals for over 20 years and found that those who consumed at least 2 servings of blueberries per week had a 23% lower risk of developing Parkinson's compared to those who rarely ate them. But how can you incorporate more of these fruits into your daily diet? There are countless possibilities, such as adding them to plain yogurt for breakfast, including them in smoothies with leafy greens for a nutritious afternoon snack, eating them fresh as a dessert or snack, or even adding them to salads for a sweet and antioxidant boost. For those concerned about cost, a practical alternative is frozen versions, which retain virtually all the benefits of fresh ones and can be stored for longer. A 65-year-old patient with Parkinson's for 7 years reported a significant improvement in energy and consistent medication effects after incorporating a berry smoothie into her daily routine. After 3 months of regular consumption, she also noticed an improvement in bowel function, a common problem in people with Parkinson's. Furthermore, her cognitive assessments showed a surprising stabilization during this period. Now let's move on to the second beneficial food, fish rich in omega-3s, especially salmon, sardines, tuna, and mackerel. Among the various protein options available, fatty fish rich in omega-3s stand out as particularly beneficial for people with Parkinson's. Studies conducted by the Institute of Molecular Medicine at the University of Lisbon have shown that omega-3 fatty acids, especially DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, have the ability to reduce neuroinflammation and promote neuronal survival. DHA is a fundamental structural component of brain cell membranes, and its deficiency has been associated with accelerated neurodegenerative processes. A clinical study published in the Journal of Neurochemistry followed patients with early-stage Parkinson's for 2 years and found that those who maintained higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids in their blood through diet had a lower rate of motor decline compared to those with low levels of these fatty acids. The benefits of omega-3s for people with Parkinson's go beyond neuroprotection. These essential fatty acids have been shown to reduce arterial stiffness, improving cerebral blood flow. This is particularly important since recent studies suggest that compromised microcirculation may contribute to the progression of cognitive symptoms in Parkinson's. Additionally, omega-3s help regulate systemic inflammatory processes and promote better insulin sensitivity, both relevant factors in Parkinson's disease. Another important benefit is the positive effect of omega-3s on the health of the gut microbiome. Increasing research is demonstrating the important connection between the gut and brain in Parkinson's disease, with evidence suggesting that imbalances in gut flora may precede the development of motor symptoms by years or even decades. How to incorporate these fish into your diet? It's recommended to consume fatty fish at least 2 to 3 times a week, preferably baked, steamed, or in broth, avoiding fried foods that can neutralize some of the benefits. For those who don't enjoy the taste of fish or have difficulty preparing it, one alternative is to consider high-quality omega-3 supplements, preferably under medical or nutritional guidance. The third beneficial food is cruciferous vegetables, such as broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, and arugula. Among the various vegetable families, cruciferous vegetables hold a prominent place when it comes to neuroprotection and brain health for people with Parkinson's. These vegetables are extraordinarily rich in bioactive compounds, particularly sulforaphane and indole-3-carbinol, which have demonstrated neuroprotective properties in several studies. A pioneering study conducted at the University of Washington demonstrated that sulforaphane activates a cellular mechanism called the NRF2 pathway, which is essentially a defense system that helps cells resist oxidative stress. In the context of Parkinson's, this pathway is particularly important, as oxidative stress is one of the main mechanisms of dopaminergic neuron destruction. Research published in the Journal of Neurochemistry documented how mice treated with sulforaphane showed significant protection against toxins that typically cause damage similar to Parkinson's. Furthermore, cruciferous vegetables are rich in folate, a B vitamin essential for brain health. Observational studies have found correlations between adequate folate levels and a reduced risk of Parkinson's, as well as a possible lower rate of disease progression in patients already diagnosed. Another important characteristic of cruciferous vegetables is their ability to support efficient liver detoxification, which may be particularly relevant considering the growing evidence that exposure to certain pesticides and environmental toxins may contribute to the development of Parkinson's disease. By strengthening the body's natural detoxification systems, these vegetables may help reduce the toxic load that potentially affects dopaminergic neurons. Additionally, cruciferous vegetables are rich in fiber and nutrients that support a healthy gut microbiome. How can you incorporate more cruciferous vegetables into your daily diet? An effective strategy is to include at least one serving of these vegetables daily, varying between different types to maximize the diversity of beneficial compounds. They can be eaten raw in salads, lightly sautéed as a side dish, or incorporated into soups and stews. For those who struggle with the texture of raw vegetables, an alternative is to include them in green smoothies along with fruit to balance the flavor. A little trick to increase sulforaphane availability is to lightly chop or grind cruciferous vegetables and let them rest for about 10 minutes before cooking. This allows an enzyme called myrosinase to convert inactive precursors into the active form of sulforaphane. It's worth noting that for people taking anticoagulant medications like warfarin, introducing large amounts of vegetables rich in sulforaphane vitamin K intake, such as cruciferous vegetables, should be done gradually and under medical supervision, as it can interfere with medication. The fourth beneficial food is anti-inflammatory herbs and spices, such as turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, and black pepper. Among the various dietary components that can benefit people with Parkinson's, certain herbs and spices hold a special place due to their extraordinary concentration of anti-inflammatory and antioxidant compounds. Turmeric stands out particularly for its active component, curcumin, which has been extensively studied for its neuroprotective properties. A study published in the Annals of the Indian Academy of Neurology demonstrated that curcumin can cross the blood-brain barrier and exert anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects directly on brain tissue. In experimental models of Parkinson's, curcumin has been shown to reduce the aggregation of alpha-synuclein, a protein whose abnormal accumulation is directly involved in the pathology of the disease. Furthermore, a pilot clinical study involving 30 patients with early-stage Parkinson's who received a standardized curcumin extract for 6 months revealed stabilization of motor scores in 73% of participants, compared to the control group that showed progressive deterioration typical of the disease. Ginger is another spice with significant neuroprotective potential, containing compounds such as gingerols and shogols, which have been shown to reduce neuroinflammation and oxidative stress in preclinical studies. A study published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology demonstrated that ginger extract can protect dopaminergic neurons against oxidative damage, potentially slowing disease progression. Cinnamon is a surprisingly powerful spice for brain health. Recent studies from Rush University Medical Center have documented how 2 compounds found in cinnamon, cinnamaldehyde and epicatechin, can inhibit the formation of toxic protein aggregates in the brain. Additionally, cinnamon has demonstrated blood sugar regulating properties, which may help prevent the glucose fluctuations that often worsen Parkinson's symptoms. Black pepper, especially its active component piperine, deserves special mention for its ability to significantly increase the bioavailability of other beneficial compounds. For example, when piperine is combined with curcumin, the absorption of the latter can increase by up to 2,000%. This is particularly relevant considering that many neuroprotective compounds have naturally low bioavailability.
How can you incorporate more of these herbs and spices into your daily diet? One practical strategy is to create custom spice blends, keeping them readily available in the kitchen. For example, a combination of turmeric, black pepper, ginger, and cinnamon can be added to soups, stews, sauces, and even hot drinks.
Another approach is to prepare therapeutic teas, such as ginger tea with a little cinnamon and honey, or the traditional golden milk, an Indian drink that combines plant-based milk with turmeric, black pepper, and cinnamon. For those seeking more concentrated benefits, standardized extracts of these spices are available in supplement form. However, it's essential to consult a healthcare professional before starting any supplementation, as some herbs and spices can interact with medications, including those used to treat Parkinson's. The fifth and final beneficial food on our list is nuts and seeds, especially Brazil nuts, walnuts, chia seeds, and flax seeds. Among the many sources of healthy fats available, nuts and seeds stand out as particularly valuable for people with Parkinson's. These foods are exceptionally rich in antioxidants, essential fatty acids, neuroprotective minerals, and anti-inflammatory compounds. Brazil nuts deserve special attention for their extraordinary content of selenium, a mineral with potent antioxidant properties. Studies at the University of Oxford have shown that selenium plays a crucial role in neuronal protection against oxidative damage. Remarkably, just 2 Brazil nuts a day provide the recommended daily intake of this essential mineral. Walnuts are rich in alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3, and contain polyphenols with neuroprotective properties. An observational study conducted by New York University followed more than 1,000 adults for 5 years and found that those who regularly consumed walnuts had better cognitive function and a lower rate of neurological decline. Flaxseed and chia seeds are extraordinary sources of plant-based omega-3 fatty acids and lignans, compounds that have been shown to reduce systemic inflammation. Flaxseed, in particular, contains compounds called lignans, which have demonstrated neuroprotective properties in preclinical studies. Research published in the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry documented how these compounds may help protect brain cells from oxidative stress. In addition to these specific benefits, nuts and seeds contain significant amounts of vitamin E, an antioxidant that has been linked to a lower risk of Parkinson's disease in longitudinal studies. Combining vitamin E with essential fatty acids appears to offer a synergistic effect on neuronal protection. How to incorporate more nuts and seeds into your daily diet. Add a tablespoon of chia seeds or ground flax seeds to your breakfast cereal, yogurt, or smoothie. Keep a mix of various nuts on hand for quick and nutritious snacks. Add chopped nuts to salads for a crunchy and nutritious touch. Make homemade plant-based milks using a variety of nuts. Try natural nut butters without added sugar or oil as a topping for fruit or whole grain toast. An important consideration: to maximize the benefits of flax seeds, it's recommended to consume them ground, as the human body can't efficiently break down the outer shell of the whole seed. Chia seeds, on the other hand, can be consumed whole, but benefit from prior hydration for better digestibility and nutrient absorption. Before we continue with the next method, I want to extend a special invitation. If you or someone you love is facing the daily challenges of Parkinson's and is looking for reliable, science-based information explained in a simple way, the Beyond Parkinson's channel was created especially for you. We regularly share practical strategies, exercises, and tips that have helped hundreds of people regain small and large amounts of independence in their daily lives. Click the subscribe button now. It's completely free, so you won't miss any techniques that can make a difference in your quality of life or that of your loved one. Now, let's continue with practical strategies that promise to bring significant relief to everyday life with Parkinson's. Now that we've learned about the 5 dietary heroes and villains for people with Parkinson's, let's talk about practical strategies for implementing these changes in your daily life. We know that changing eating habits can be challenging, especially when dealing with a condition that already poses so many other challenges. That's why we've developed a gradual and realistic approach that has helped hundreds of patients transition to a more supportive diet for managing Parkinson's. The first strategy is what we call the gradual substitution method. Instead of trying to completely eliminate all problem foods at once, which often leads to feelings of deprivation and eventual withdrawal, we recommend replacing one food at a time every 2 weeks. Start with the items you consume most frequently and for which there is a pleasant alternative. For example, if you consume whole milk daily, you could start by swapping it for a skim version or a plant-based alternative like calcium-fortified almond milk. Once you've gotten used to this first change, move on to the next food. Remember, this isn't a deprivation diet, but rather a smart approach that prioritizes foods that support brain health while minimizing those that can accelerate disease progression. A second extremely effective strategy is the plant-centric meal planning technique. Note that we're not suggesting a strict vegetarian diet, but rather an approach where vegetables, fruits, whole grains, nuts, and seeds occupy the center of the plate, with healthy animal proteins like omega-3 rich fish and occasional lean meats serving as side dishes in moderate amounts. In practice, this means that approximately 2/3 of your plate should be made up of colorful vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, while 1/3 should be reserved for quality proteins. This ratio naturally maximizes the intake of neuroprotective compounds while minimizing potentially problematic foods. Many patients report that this approach not only helps with Parkinson's symptoms, but also significantly improves overall energy, digestion, and even mood. A 72-year-old patient with Parkinson's for 12 years told me that after 3 months of following this eating pattern, his on periods on medication became more predictable and longer. allowing him to once again enjoy daily walks in the park, something he had abandoned years ago. The third strategy involves synchronizing diet with medication. For people with Parkinson's taking levodopa, the timing of protein intake can significantly impact the medication's effectiveness. This occurs because levodopa competes with branched-chain amino acids present in proteins for transporters that allow their passage from the intestine to the bloodstream, and subsequently, from the blood to the brain. One approach that has worked well for many patients is to concentrate the majority of protein intake at dinner, keeping breakfast and lunch focused primarily on complex carbohydrates, vegetables, and fruits. This allows medication taken during the day to be absorbed more efficiently, resulting in better symptom control when you need to be most active. For patients with more severe motor fluctuations, some neurologists recommend a modified version of the protein redistribution diet, where daily protein intake is calculated and strategically distributed throughout the day. This more structured approach requires professional guidance, but has shown impressive results for more challenging cases. The fourth strategy focuses on smart hydration. Dehydration is a common problem in people with Parkinson's and can significantly worsen symptoms such as stiffness, constipation, and orthostatic hypotension, a drop in blood pressure when standing up. Additionally, medications like levodopa often cause dry mouth, which can lead to dental problems if not properly managed. We recommend not only increasing your daily water intake, but also incorporating functional beverages that offer additional benefits. For example, green tea contains a compound called EGCG, which has been shown in laboratory studies to have neuroprotective properties. Herbal teas like ginger and turmeric can contribute anti-inflammatory compounds. Water infused with citrus fruits provides vitamin C, an important antioxidant for brain health. A practical tip that has helped many of our patients is to keep a water bottle visible and easily accessible in different rooms of the house, and to set reminders on your phone to drink water regularly throughout the day. Our fifth and final strategy is what we call the mental spice garden, a technique we developed specifically for our Parkinson's patients. It involves selecting 3 to 5 neuroprotective herbs and spices, such as turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, black pepper, and oregano, and consciously incorporating them into your daily diet. The garden can be literal, by growing some of these herbs in pots in the kitchen, or figurative, by keeping these spices organized and easily accessible. Many patients report that this simple strategy not only makes food more flavorful without the need for additional salt, but also serves as a daily reminder of the power they have over their health through conscious dietary choices. A 68-year-old patient completely transformed her relationship with food after starting her mental garden. She reported seeing each meal as an opportunity to nourish her brain, rather than simply satisfying hunger or momentary pleasure. This shift in perspective had a profound impact, not only on her food choices, but also on her overall attitude toward her illness, transforming her from a passive victim to an active participant in her treatment. Let's summarize what we learned today about nutrition and Parkinson's. We know the 5 foods that potentially worsen symptoms or accelerate disease progression. Dairy products, especially whole milk dairy, ultra-processed foods rich in additives, refined sugar and simple carbohydrates, excess sodium and salty ultra-processed foods, and processed and undercooked red meat. We also identified 5 powerful allies in the battle against Parkinson's: red and purple berries, fish rich in omega-3, cruciferous vegetables, anti-inflammatory herbs and spices, and nuts and seeds rich in neuroprotective nutrients. We learned 5 practical strategies for implementing these changes in our daily lives: gradually replacing problematic foods, plant-centered meal planning, intelligently synchronizing food with medication, functional hydration, and the mental spice garden. It's important to emphasize that these recommendations don't replace conventional medical treatment, but they can significantly complement it. Adequate nutrition can enhance the effects of medications, reduce side effects, possibly slow the progression of the disease, and above all, improve your daily quality of life. Remember that each person with Parkinson's is unique, with specific manifestations of the disease, individual nutritional needs, and distinct food preferences. Therefore, consider these recommendations as a starting point that can be customized to meet your specific needs, ideally with the support of healthcare professionals familiar with Parkinson's disease. If this video brought you any hope or helpful information, I'd like to invite you to join our support community here on the channel. Living with Parkinson's presents unique challenges that often only those who experience them truly understand. By subscribing to the Beyond Parkinson's channel, you'll have access to new videos every week with specific techniques for each Parkinson's symptom, from exercises to improve balance, to strategies to reduce morning stiffness. We're committed to bringing you content that truly makes a difference in your daily life, filtered and tested by experts, but explained in simple, straightforward language. Many of our subscribers report that small changes learned here have transformed their independence and confidence. Subscribing is simple. Just click the subscribe button below this video and then the bell to be notified when we publish new content. Remember, you're not alone on this journey, and every step counts. We want to follow and support your progress and celebrations. Every small victory matters, and we're here to help you achieve many of them. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you in our next video. Take care.